Ragnar was in good favor with Charlemagne's successor, King Charles, and even owned some land in the Frankish Empire. But it seems like Ragnar had a falling out with the king, lost his Frankish land, and set out to raid Paris as vengeance. Now, the average Viking raiding party was anywhere from 50 to 100 people on a handful of ships. But remember, Ragnar was obsessed with the idea of power in numbers, so he took 5,000 men on over 100 ships to raid Paris. These numbers were unheard of and unprecedented for Viking raiding parties, even as the Danes had been pillaging all across Frankish lands. Paris at the time was entirely on an island in the middle of the River Seine. King Charles divided his army into two halves, setting up on either side of the river. The idea was that as Ragnar's ships came down the Seine, Frankish attacks from both riverbanks would just overwhelm Ragnar. But Ragnar realized this, so his men took to land. They engaged with the smaller of the two armies, defeating them easily while the remaining Franks could only look on helplessly from across the river. After victory, Ragnar sacrificed the surviving Frankish soldiers to Odin. They were all hanged from trees on the riverbanks, so the dead Frankish bodies were on full display for the other half of the French army across the river. To taunt the Christian Franks further, Ragnar and his men invaded the city on Easter Sunday. They quickly sacked Paris because the French were unable to muster a decent defense. The Vikings plundered the city successfully and went back to their camp. The plan was to continue this raid for as long as possible, but then disease began to run through the Viking camp. Ragnar, though, did well to conceal this from the Frankish enemy. Unaware of the disease situation, King Charles decided that his men stood no chance against the Vikings. He agreed to pay Ragnar over 5,000 pounds of silver and gold to just leave entirely. Ragnar accepted, knowing that his men probably couldn't go on much longer anyway. And even though the ransom had quite effectively gotten Ragnar to leave, he was not the last Viking the Franks would see. Indeed, it seems this payment only set up a precedent for future raids. Over the coming years, the Danes continued to raid and pillage across the Frankish territories. In total, they received over a dozen more ransoms, just like the one Ragnar had gotten.